I think there's no doubt that these appalling revelations have severely bruised the entire committee process. I think the question now is, or one of the questions is, what are the various courses of action that can be taken to redeem some of that? It's quite clear that the Commissioner for Standards has a role, and he must fulfil that. It's also probably correct that the Chairman's Liaison Committee has some matters to look at. But much as Ms. Ryan might like it, I don't think that excludes this committee from the correct exercise of its functions. And I think we do need to begin to establish some of the outstanding and as yet hidden facts of this matter. It would be important to seek the question, and perhaps the former clerk of the committee could shed some light on this. How was contact initiated between Mr. Bryson and the chair? As the normal expectation would be that the clerk would communicate with an upcoming witness to explain the protocols and answer any practical questions. So, at what point did that move from that normal process to the abnormal process of the chair involvement and his direct communication? And was the committee clerk, who wasn't, of course, our current clerk, had he any knowledge or insight into any of that? And I think within the process of the Assembly we're entitled to ask about that. Then, as others have said, there's the very important continuing issue of the scale of knowledge of other members, because it's quite clear, since there was a party interest, in respect of the chair in getting Mr. Bryson's evidence into public, and that seems to have been the whole issue and thrust of the email exchange, to make sure that that which was going to be said was said in public, not private session. And as part of that, it seems to emerge from those emails that Mr. Bryson's opening statement was shared. Now, with whom was it shared? Was it just shared with the chair? Or was it shared with other members of the committee? I think that's something that can be legitimately explored. And in terms of the finance minister, it's quite clear that the author of the emails, and I don't believe for one moment the author was Mr. O'Hara, but whoever the author of the emails was, it's quite clear that they had an expectation of a helpful role being played by Mr. Amelia, because the email on the 22nd of September at 22:01 hours expressly anticipates some helpful intervention from Mr. Amelia, which would help get the matter from private into public. And it's interesting then, when you go to the Hansard of that session, when that decision was taken, that Mr. Amelia made this observation: I think that the public is desperate to find out who was going to benefit from this fixed, crooked, corrupt deal. I believe that Mr. Bryson will be able to help us in that. And what was the basis of that belief? Where was that belief grounded? Was it grounded from prior sight of the opening statement with the references to person A, B, C, D and E? Or was it grounded in something else? Because if he publicly expressed a belief in support of the evidence being given in public that Mr. Bryson would be able to help us in that, then it had to be grounded in something. And in expressing that opinion, of course, he fulfilled the anticipation of the author of the email that he would make a helpful intervention. And therefore, I think it's not enough for the present minister to simply say, I knew nothing of these communications. I think there are many more probing questions in that regard. As to how we take that forward, well, I suppose the committee certainly can ask Mr. O'Meara to come before them. But I think before we were to do that, we should give him the opportunity of providing and responding to the request to provide all the communications that there had been with him as a committee member, so that he can lay out for us what those communications were. And then I think there may well be a role on foot of that for Mr. O'Meara to appear before the committee and to be probed about those issues. Another option the committee has, of course, is as a committee to table a motion in the House calling on him to stand down or more. So the committee has various options in that regard. One thing, I want to move on and say something else. I sense from some members, particularly the DUP members of this committee, who never wanted the NAMA inquiry, who never in the course of it asked a single probing question, I sense from some of them that they see this as an opportunity to bury the NAMA issue, or at least to bury the legacy report. Yes, the legacy report is the product of the former committee, and I think it's important the public understand the former committee, not this committee, that is in any way tainted by this matter. But the legacy report is not something which in consequence simply goes in the bin. It's something which has important information within it. And of course you read it with the knowledge and the consciousness that there was collusion between Sinn Féin and at least one witness in respect of it. But you still, I believe, would not be justified in burying it or putting it in. And I think there is a bit of, maybe an element of faux anger about all this for the purpose of attaining that. Yes, these are atrocious things that happened, should not have happened. But we need to, some are very anxious to throw the baby out with the bathwater on this issue. And I think it's also important going forward for public confidence that the objective of this being an end of this committee's interest in NAMA, that objective is not obtained. Because I think public expectation and something that would contribute to the rehabilitation of public confidence in this committee is that in spite of anything that's happened, that there are still issues to be investigated when they can be investigated, subject to the constraints of the NCA. But this committee is not giving up or walking away from that responsibility, however much some might like it, and that those issues will have to, at the appropriate time, be further and properly investigated. And that brings me to this observation, Chair. This committee now has to be whiter than white. We have to be, like Caesar's wife, beyond reproach. And therefore, if and when we do come to further NAMA investigations, I have to say, I think it would be wholly inappropriate if you, Chair, were to chair the committee at that point. Because you are the wife of someone who's already given evidence to the previous committee, somebody from the heart of DFP at the time when all the goings-on were going on in respect of NAMA, someone whose evidence was described and could only be described as vague and evasive and selective in his memory. And therefore to suggest that the wife of someone who themselves was nominated to sit on the NAMA Advisory Committee could, from the point of view of public perception, chair further investigations into NAMA, I think that is stretching public credulity just too far. So I think that when we come to that point, you as chair have to consider your position in regard to that, because I think the perception and the necessity for utter transparency will be necessary in all of that. And just as the Finance Minister has perceptions to deal with, so I think you as chair at that point would have perceptions to deal with, which I think could only be dealt with by you disengaging from the committee's deliberations and certainly from chairing it. So I think there are serious issues here. I think there are things the committee can do. I'm not at all impressed by the litany of Sinn Féin denials. Every controversial issue in our province's history, every time there's been Sinn Féin has been caught out, it has started with a solemn denial. And of course, the truth has always turned out to be quite different. So I don't think we can be distracted by that. And I think therefore we need to, as a committee, proceed to do our part, not treading on the toes of the Commissioner or in the Committee of Liaison Committee, but doing our part in inquiring and investigating as best we can, particularly focused on the present Finance Minister, given that NAMA remains within his bailiwick and therefore his knowledge, Jim Well said, what he knew and when he knew it, are very relevant to this, and I think we should begin that process by giving him the opportunity to convey all the communications he had, with a view to probably bringing them then hereafter for the committee.